There's a lot of really interesting fights on this card, Matt. And at 185 pounds, we have two UFC debuts, and you might be more familiar with the fighter on the left than you are with the fighter on the right. And that's because Jordan Williams, out of his last 4 fights, 3 of them were on Contender Series. He's won 1 and 1 no contest, which is crazy to think of. And maybe if the first fight went a little bit differently, where he knocked out Tim Karen, if he didn't test positive for the weed, then maybe we would have seen him in the UFC a little bit sooner. So Jordan Williams, he lost on the last season of Contender Series, 2019, lost by split decision. Then he comes back out, waits. There were bouts that he was supposed to have, one against KB Buller up in Canada with Unified. Buller, you're going to see next week against Tom Breeze, stepping in on somewhat short a notice for Roman Kopylov. But Jordan Williams, we saw him this past time out against a really tough fighter, jiu-jitsu fighter, and Gregory Rodriguez. And it looked like a welterweight fighting a light heavyweight. Jordan Williams was so much smaller than Rodriguez. They stood, they traded, Rodriguez went for some head kicks, and at the end, Jordan Williams finished that fight with a combo that Matt said was reminiscent of the time that the New York badass, Phil Baroni, knocked out Dave Mene. Remember Dave Mene? Cool tattoos. That was an awesome fight, and it's a highlight that I've always liked to go back and watch all the time. Phil Baroni. But in terms of this fight, Jordan Williams, 9-3 with the 1-0 contest. There's 2 really problematic losses that I have, and I'll dispel the myth of, he's been knocked out before, so it could happen again. The first fight was against Kazula Vargas at 170 pounds. Vargas actually looked like a mammoth of a man. Now, I know, in the UFC, it hasn't looked great for Kazula Vargas, but the kid was bodied up, fighting for good old Tachi PF, the one in Lemoore, California. And in that fight, he caught Jordan Williams. He threw a nice high kick and threw a nice hook after that. It opened up a cut on Williams. Williams ended the round decently, but then at the very end, doctor stoppage due to that cut. So Vargas gets the win. Then he fought Dwight Grant, and he got knocked out cold in the fight against Grant. Now, Grant, you might know in the UFC at 85, but at the time, that fight was at 70. So for Jordan Williams, since he's moved up to 85, and it was after that fight against Dwight Grant, he took 2 years off. He's still a young guy. Took 2 years off, moves up to 85, and then since then, pretty well leveled off with the 1 split decision loss on his record since. That's Jordan Williams in a nutshell. Nassourdine Imavov is one of my favorite prospects that hasn't been in the UFC. Trains with a great gym, MMA Factory, over in France. A lot of people figured that we'd see Imavov if the UFC ended up having a show in France where MMA is now legalized. But we get him here, and I couldn't be more excited. Nassourdine Imavov with the Ferdinand Lopez team. You've seen Cyril Gane. He's got a big fight coming up against Anche Delia, but also obviously Francis Ngannou coming out of there as well. So for Imavov, in one of the, not lower weight classes, but lower than those two, we get a guy that has a nickname, the Sniper, and his striking is absolutely on point. Nice low kicks, but it's the combos that he sets up with his hands. Takedown defense, little salty. In his last time out, Aris FC, the first card, he took on Jonathan Meunier, and Robin Black described it best in that fight.
And see how he sort of swims through fighting? He flows through it.
And you might recognize Meunier from his time with the UFC. Had a loss to Colby Covington on short notice, stepped in for a teammate there, lost that fight. That's going to happen. And then his next time out won. And then when the UFC switched hands and went over to WME IMG, they canceled his contract because he had brain surgery in 2010. Now, that's enough about Meunier. But the fact is, he was a UFC caliber fighter. He was 1-1 at the time. And yeah, maybe the results haven't been all that great. And Meunier hasn't come out since that Imavov loss. But he's one of those great guys at TriStar that's still highly regarded as a good fighter at 185 pounds. So it's going to be interesting to see how this one plays out. We saw how good Imavov was. We saw once he hit Meunier with almost a kill shot and had Meunier rocked, he was able to follow it up and really land clean and finish that fight. Same thing for Jordan Williams in his last time out. I love the matchmaking. I think it's actually perfect. And the really interesting thing, Imavov was actually supposed to fight Rodriguez on Contender Series, but pulled out. So Jordan Williams got that fight and got himself a contract. Imavov didn't even have to fight on Contender Series to get a contract. So Matt, I'm really looking forward to this one. The last thing I want to say about Williams, he trains at a NorCal Fighting Alliance under David Terrell. You might remember David Terrell from fighting Evan Tanner for the UFC's middleweight championship back in 2005. I've gone through everybody's history. Matt, you were born in 1998.
I was.
Do you want your stat line too? We'll leave it out. I love this fight. Take over from here.
So Jordan Williams in his last fight against Rodriguez on Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series would have lost Imavov if he was fighting him that night. I know that's a bit of a riddle right there, but Jordan Williams was so hittable on that night, it wasn't even funny. He had that kind of first run of Justin Gaethje style in him where it was just, I'm just going to keep on walking forward like this. I'm going to get hit with some shots. I'm going to return some. And he has good power, but it's against a guy like Imavov, who throws straight punches, who can kind of work with the hands in the clinch if Williams is just keep on kind of going forward. I think the takedown threat of Imavov is going to give Williams a big problem. And then on the feet, I think the accuracy, I think the power of Imavov can mess with Jordan Williams. If Jordan Williams can stay on the outside, land power, low kicks, really work the body of Imavov, wear him down to the point where you don't really have to worry about the wrestling. You don't really have to worry about all of his other skills, even though he's known more as a striker. But if you don't have to worry about the takedowns, it's just really going to open up your own striking game. But Imavov, it's weird. He's the bigger guy. You'd think the stronger guy. He's got the better wrestling. He's got the better striking skills, I would say, even though Williams might hit a little bit harder. But just the fact that Williams walks right into danger, and not in a positive way either. Not in a way where, okay, he can slip a few shots and then land power. He's going to eat those shots too close to the distance, and that's going to worry me in pretty much any fight he ever has in the UFC.
And that's the trouble. Like, he's had these good showings on Contender Series, the Karen fight, the fight against Rodriguez. But, I mean, the knockout losses, and I get it. You know, you move from 70 to 185. It was kind of like, and this is a poor example. That's what I was going to say. Kama-worthy. When he was at 45, he was losing by knockout. He moves up to 55. Went on that great run before he fought Otmar Zaitar. Yeah, I ate my words there. But he wasn't getting knocked out as much. But for Jordan Williams, those fights at 70, he's still fighting like that. Like, he took that time off, moved up to 85. But he can withstand a lot of damage and give more of his own. Oh, yeah. That's the trouble against a guy like Imavov. Like, a guy that's 24 years old. So 8-2. What's that record mean to you? Well, his pro debut, he fought a guy that was 7-2. Lost that fight, because that's going to happen. And then his other loss, and this was a while ago, back in 2017, was against Michael Michalski, that you might recognize from his pretty high-profile fights with KSW. So Imavov's fought maybe not the best competition, and yes, he's lost to decent fighters. I think at this point in his career, he's one of those young guys that with a win over Jordan Williams, automatically you're going to get a bit of the U.S. audience if he's able to win, and just continue from there. And I think he has a really good chance at 85 to make a little bit of noise. I'm kind of giving it away here, but Williams to this point is the favorite, minus 150. But he opened as a minus 215 favorite. So the money's coming in on Imavov, who's now plus 125 underdog, open plus 165. Over on Tapology is 653 votes. 53% going Williams, 73% saying he's going to win by knockout. The one thing I do want to say before the picks, Imavov in that Mounier fight did get hit a fair bit. It was when he was on his back foot, he'd get hit by a jab straight down the middle. So that's a little bit worrying when you move up against the more technical strikers. Overall, I'm going to put cards on the table here. I've got Imavov to get the win. I think this is a possible performance of the night because Williams definitely has a shot in this one. He throws really good hard punches. And if he's able to back up Imavov, holy smokes, there's a good opportunity for a Williams win. I just think Imavov's the more technical striker. And when we're talking technique versus looping shots, it's usually the tactician that gets the win. I'm going Imavov here.
Yeah, Imavov should be able to get it done. You're dealing with a guy who is just, he's kind of better at everything at this point in his career. The threat of getting knocked out from Jordan Williams is there. Williams has big power, and they both kind of have that. We're just going to go forward to see which one falls. So it should be a very entertaining fight for as long as it lasts. But yeah, I'm going with Imavov. I'm not as high as him, or on him as Craig is. Craig's putting that Craig White stamp onto his name, but I do think he should be able to get the win, hopefully move up the ranks a little bit in the near future.
Matt, I'm really looking forward to this fight. Both of us going with Nassourdine Imavov to bring the win back to France. And Matt, I'm really looking forward to this card. You got a featured prelim headliner in Court McGee and Carlos Condit. You've also got a great main event between Holm and Irena Aldana at the top of the bantamweight ranks. So you're not going to want to miss those. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, Matt, as we always say.
Let's get into it.